Good afternoon in New York, good morning in California, good early morning in Hawaii, and welcome whatever time of day or night for all who are joining us from all corners of the world. I'm Yael Danieli, founder and executive director of the International Center for the Study, Prevention, and Treatment of Multigenerational Legacies of Trauma. ICMGLT for short. Thank you for joining our webinar on mother languages, multi-generational trauma, resilience, and identity healing. Before we begin, let me acknowledge with deep gratitude and appreciation the invaluable contribution of Dr. Mary Fabry, chair of the ICMGLT Working Group on Indigenous Peoples Issues, without whom this event would not have taken place. And Mary, of course, is also on our board, also on our advisory council, invaluable. Monica Mutsava, thank you. This International Center for Multi-Generational Legacies of Trauma webinar is held immediately following 21 February, the International Day of Mother Languages, that according to UNESCO's Director General's Audrey Azoulay, quotes, shape millions of developing young minds, as it is in their mother tongue that children learn best. Recognizing the importance of implementing multi-generational education, multilingual education, our esteemed presenters have not only experienced the colonizing forced alienation from their mother languages, but have been in the forefront of developing programs that promote intergenerational language revitalization and the preservation of their culture and heritage for their communities. Your moderator, that is me, I'm a clinical psychologist, victimologist, pioneer traumatologist, and psychohistorian. I devoted much of my career to studying, treating, writing about, and preventing lifelong and multi-generational impacts of massive trauma, to victims' rights, to rights of future generations, and to reparative justice. I conceive of history as it is lived now, not only as a set of dates and events, but as it is shaping our identities and guiding our choices today. Our first speaker is George Eugene Fouron, a distinguished professor of Africana Studies at Stony Brook University. Dr. Fouron is a seasoned educator with a career spanning more than 4 decades, having begun as a primary school teacher in 1979 and joining SBU in 1985. As a teacher, he speaks powerfully to the complexities of racial politics, calling attention to the Haitian diaspora and issues of transnationalism. George is a member of our Haiti Issues Working Group. Our second speaker is Stanley Ralph Rodriguez from the Santa Isabel Band of the Lipe Nation, a United States Navy Desert Storm veteran and Californian Indian Heritage Commissioner. Dr. Rodriguez is director and faculty of Kumeyaay Community College. He teaches at Kumeyaay Community College and the California State University San Marcos. Dedicated to educating indigenous communities about Kumeyaay history, culture, and language, his passion, you will correct my pronunciation, Stan, please, later. His passion to revitalize Kumeyaay language and culture inspires his students to carry on their Kumeyaay traditions. Stan has been with us before and is extremely helpful in wonderful networking around the world. Aurelio Agkaoili is our third speaker. Associate Professor at University of Hawaii at Manoa in the Department of Indo-Pacific Languages and Literature, where he coordinated the Hokkano language, culture, and literature program for years. Professor Agkaoili founded NAKEM conferences in 2006. This is an international consortium of language, culture, and education advocates. And I'm sure Aurelio will explain the meaning of NAKEM. The consortium has been at the forefront of pursuing language justice, cultural democracy, and liberatory education. His publications are written in his 3 languages. Last but not least is Kaimana Barkase, an educator in the Aina Pauahi group Kamehameha schools focusing on capacity and well-being of Kanaka, Hawaii, through a healthy community ecosystem with Aina education and culture. Kaimana is Hawaii State Board of Education Vice Chair and DJ producer on KWXX FM's Hawaiian language radio program, Alana Akai Haikina. I hope that you too, Kaimana, will avail all of our webinars on Indigenous peoples' issues on your radio, to your radio network. Kaimana is a deep sea voyager captain and educator in diverse disciplines, voyaging and navigation, ethnozoology, indigenous media, and beyond. We have an hour and a half for the webinar. Each of our panelists will speak for about 10 minutes. Following an interchange among us, I will open the floor to questions or brief comments from the virtual audience. We will then conclude with final words. Please use the chat function and we will do our best to respond to as many as we can. Feel free to direct your questions to a particular panelist or to the full panel. I now have the great pleasure to offer the screen to Professor George Fouron. George.
Okay, thank you, Yael, and thank you everyone for attending this webinar. It's very, very, very important. I will speak primarily about my experience growing up in Haiti and then being caught between Creole, which is the Haitian language, and French. As a child growing up in Haiti in the 1960s, I was forbidden to speak my mother tongue, Haitian Creole, in school. During that period, since French was the country's official language, it was the only medium of instruction the Haitian government allowed the Haitian educational system, regardless of the student's ability to understand and speak it. Although some families in Haiti spoke French with their children as their first or second language, as it is today, it was not the same for the overwhelming majority of Haitian children. While Haiti has been a Creole-speaking society since 100% of the population speaks and understands it, At that time, it was estimated that less than 5% of Haitians spoke French fluently. Since then, many linguists have estimated that the percentage of Haitians who can use French at various levels of fluency are 10 to 15% of the population, and they are being very generous. For the balance of the population, Haitian Creole is the only language they know. We also need to point out that Haitian Creole is not corrupt French or a dialect of French. It is a separate language with its own grammatical rules, although it uses a significant number of Old French words, since it evolved primarily from the 17th century, from the contact that took place during colonial time between French settlers and the enslaved Africans who spoke many different African languages. From being a pidgin language during that period, it soon emerged as a full-fledged language thereafter. In addition, Haitian Creole has been influenced by other languages such as Portuguese, Spanish, English, Taino, and some linguists even say the Aramaic language. I remember till today what our kindergarten teacher, Miss Bozil, told the class as succinctly as possible for us to understand the first day of school. Pas de Creole. Creole not allowed. Yet, I did not speak French at home, and it was inconceivable that I would address my friends in French. Therefore, when I began my education, I was in almost total ignorance of what the kindergarten teacher was saying to the class. The warning my kindergarten teacher gave us was very ominous and very threatening. She had at the ready a whip made of hardened cowhide, known in Haitian Creole as rigoise, to punish the students she caught speaking the only language they knew. What is interesting to notice was that during that time, I did not know of anyone who objected to that unfair rule and treatment. My parents did not, neither did my friends' parents. Tacitly, they all supported that imperative. As the use of French became more and more complex at the elementary level, school level, it became more and more difficult for most of us to understand what our teachers were saying to us. At that time, it became more and more challenging for us to express to them the parts of the lessons we did not understand because we had to ask the questions in French, a language we did not speak. At the same time, the teachers openly favored those few children who spoke French at home and came to school ready to learn in French. Later on, I was enrolled in a public school which was the equivalent of an American middle school. The situation became even more complicated and traumatizing because the majority of the teachers were religious brothers from Brittany, France, and French-speaking Canada. These teachers did not care to learn Haitian Creole, and they applied the non-Creole mandate even more rigorously. What was even more damning was the fact that teachers pitted the students against each other by encouraging us to spy on one another, to report those who violated that inflexible rule so that they would punish them. For example, Dr. Yves Desjean, a famous linguist advocate for the use of Haitian Creole in the Haitian schools, although he was a member of the elite class and spoke French as his native language, reported that, quote, in a school in Carrefour, a lower section of Port-au-Prince, the capital city, a symbol, which is a Haitian high school slang for a token, often a small piece of cardboard, is passed on to a high school student at the beginning of the week. He keeps silent, resolutely and carefully, watching his fellow students so that he may catch them when even the merest whisper in Creole falls from the lips, at which point he pounces on the unfortunate rule breaker and gives him the symbol. The goal is to avoid being the bearer of the symbol at the end of the week, when 10 blows on the palm of the hand with a horse whip or rigoise will be meted out. The result of this truly despicable practice is to cause students to spy and denounce one another, and it is emblematic of the widespread disrespect shows toward Creole. End of quote. Whenever we are caught speaking Haitian Creoles with our classmates, in addition to inflicting corporal punishment on us, the foreign religious brothers and the Haitian teachers would compel us to waste our time writing hundreds of lines, thousands for the recidivists, to pledge that we would not speak Haitian Creole on school ground. Michel de Graff, a renowned Haitian linguist and an MIT professor who attended Saint Louis de Gonzague, a prestigious high school that caters mostly to upper-class children, wrote that, quote, some parents and teachers even make children scrub their tongue with soap, lemon, and vinegar to metaphorically wash away the Creole. He continues by writing that Creole-speaking children continue to be subjected to myriad classroom humiliations, including in at least one school where he saw a sign that says, quote, I have to always express myself in French, otherwise I'm the gorilla of the class. In general, upper-class Haitian parents have always been opposed to the use of Creole for the children's education because they believe that in doing so, the school would be depriving the children of opportunities they consider to be theirs. At the same time, most middle-class and lower-class parents have adopted the same attitude. Many monolingual Creole speakers of the middle and lower classes are even more resentful of the idea of using Haitian Creole in their children's education, although they cannot speak French with them. They argue that since French is a language of power and advancement, by not instructing their children in French, the teachers would be blocking their advancement in the social ladder. According to Fouron, some parents, most especially those who reside in the diaspora, who have the means to send their children to upper-class schools in Haiti before they rejoin them in the United States, strive to send them to Catholic schools reputed to have maintained French as their main language of instruction. After I completed the equivalent of the junior high school at the semi-private religious schools, I moved to the local high school, which was entirely staffed by Haitian teachers. Like all the teachers I had before them, they steadfastly adhered to the same pedagogical approach, although they did not enforce the anti-Creole rule as rigidly as the religious brother school did. By the time I completed the high school cycle in 1966, out of the 100 students who started first grade with us, we were only 7 students in that group. When I attended the University of Haiti, the same policy was applied. The professors did not tolerate the use of Creole in the classroom either. As a result, Haitian students learned through rote memorization throughout their educational career, repeating like parrots what the teachers had dictated to them in French. As for my classmate and me, despite years of being drilled in French, our mastery of the language was limited to formal French and to subjects and concepts in academic arena, since my classmates and I had never had the opportunity to use French outside of that sphere. To this day, Many Haitians who have attended schools in Haiti cannot express themselves in French. The genesis of this misguided practice. This practice was anchored in an alienating notion, which was strongly supported by both the Haitian political and international elite classes. The argument was that since Haiti was the Black France in the Americas, therefore Haitian education should be based on the French language and the French culture that we were told was universal. To that effect, as early as 1870, Demisvar Delorme, a Haitian intellectual of great renown, wrote, quote, "This country has fought a long war against France, yet the nation that it loves the most is still her. France speaks the language of rights and generous instincts of the soul. One day, our nation will establish in the Americas a new French civilization." Even as French writers disparage the Haitian nation, such as Gobineau, Lasselve, Cochina, Dallot, Aubin, and many more, and as they continue to spew their vitriolic racist and tirade rants against Haiti and the Haitians, Haitian intellectuals and politicians continue to pledge their allegiance to France and unabashedly express their admiration for the French language and culture. They accuse these slanders and defamers of Haiti and the Haitians of not being truly French. For example, Louis-Joseph Janvier, another celebrated Haitian intellectual and diplomat, wrote in 1883 in his book, La République d'Haïti et ses visiteurs, the Haitian Republic and its visitors, that, quote, "French is the capital of the world's nations. Haiti is the Black France." When the United States occupied Haiti between 1915 and 1934, the occupiers sought to modify the educational system by abolishing the French-based liberal arts program that, from their perspective, was counterproductive to Haiti's advancement. Instead, they vowed to replace it with vocational agricultural and industrial training to bring it closer to the Tuskegee model that Booker T. Washington was implementing in his institute in Alabama to give Haitian education an Anglo-Saxon characteristic. That initiative exasperated Haitians of the upper class, who reacted with all their strength to defeat the American plan. In fact, the Haitians succeeded in their endeavor because the Americans failed in their attempt to control the Ministry of Education, which remained under Haitian control during the occupation. As the debates raged on, Georges Sylvain, a prominent Haitian intellectual, poet, and diplomat, warned his compatriots of the danger of abandoning the French education system to adopt the one proposed by the Americans in the following terms: "If we were to abandon our French education, what would become of us? Lost in the masses of enslaved Blacks of America? A little Anglo-Saxon dust? The more we will be able to preserve our French culture, the more chances we will have to keep our Haitian physiognomy." Another Haitian intellectual of great renown, Georges Lescouflair, declared in 1937, as he was fighting against the US occupation, that, quote, "They say that Haiti imitates France. This is excellent, and that's the way it should be. Without this piece of armor that is French culture, with all these beautiful French elements that are innate in us, but especially assimilated, Africans and uncouth, we would have remained, and the Americans would have quickly swallowed us in one mouthful." Fortuna Gary, a Haitian teacher and representative of the Haitian women, at the UN Commission working on the status of women in 1948, recalled in 1950 that when she was a young student, the teachers, quote, taught that her true country was France and not Haiti. The student knew La Marseillaise, the French national anthem, more than the Dessalinian, the Haitian national anthem. The 4th of July, French Independence Day, was celebrated with great pomp in Haiti at that time. Attempts to use Haitian Creole officially during colonial time. In 1792, during the colonial period, the government of revolutionary France sent Etienne Paul Virel and Léger Félicité Sontonax as civil commissioners to the country for the purpose of enforcing a decree by the French National Assembly, which enfranchised free blacks and mulattoes, although it did not yet free the slaves. They went in to inform these populations of their human and political rights. And Sontonax, who understood the predicament of the slaves and the freedmen at that time, translated the text in Haitian Creole. That was the first time that an official act was translated into Creole. He then had it read to the slaves and the freedmen so that they would know the entitlement the National Assembly of France had bestowed upon them. As far as literary production is concerned, scholars considered the poem Lisette quittait la plaine, Lisette left the plain, to be the earliest text written in Haitian Creole, dating approximately to 1757. Other notable works include the 1944 novel Gouverneur de la Rosée, Master of the Jew, which was published after his author's death, Jacques Romain, an upper-class French-speaking Marxist Haitian author. In the book, he presented Manuel, the protagonist of the story, a peasant who was fighting for peasants' rights, using brief passages in Creole, Creolized French, and even Standard French. Although he knew the peasant could not speak French because previously in 1932, he stated, quote, "I am a communist, the son of prominent landowners. I renounce my bourgeois roots. I have lived a great deal with peasants. I know their life, their mentality, their religion, that amazing mix of Catholicism and voodoo." We cite the following other works by Haitians who try to write in Creole. Franck Etienne's 1975 Des Affaires, the first novel written and published in Haitian Creole. Michel Wolf-Trouillot's 2014 Tidifé Boulé sur Histoire Haïti, A People's History of Haiti, which is a bottom-up account of the Haitian Revolution, and Madeleine Payer's novel In Cel Badio, movement to use Haitian Creole as language of instruction. Interestingly, through the years, many concerned educators and researchers, both Haitians and foreigners, have sought to address Haiti's linguistic dichotomy. Among them, we can cite the Reverend Ormond McConnell, an Irish Methodist preacher who in 1940, in an attempt to convert souls to his faith, initiative in the lower class areas of Port-au-Prince and in some rural areas, a few centers experimenting with teaching reading in Creole using the International Phonetic Alphabet. Although this initiative was laudable, many Haitian intellectuals and political leaders considered it to be too American and not French enough.
George, are you near the conclusion because we have 3 more speakers?
Yes, I will conclude in a few minutes.
Thank you.
3 years later, Dr. Fren Laubach, a former American missionary, came to Haiti to help the Reverend McConnell improve the phonetic method. Although there have been many important reform movements, such as the Bernard Reform in 1979, to this day, Creole is sidelined by French, although in the Haitian social networks, such as the radio programs, the dominant language is Haitian Creole. Now, with the migration of Haitians to the United States and many parts of the world, what we see happening is that there is a pushback against the use of French in Haitian Creole and in Haitian schools and political and social spheres. For example, President Préval, the Haitian president, addressed the UN nation, the UN National Assembly, the UN Assembly in Haitian Creole in 2008. He made a speech in Haitian Creole, and he didn't care whether or not they could translate it in other languages. It didn't matter because Haitian Creole is the language of Haitians. I will still try to do the same thing, but he didn't do it as formally as possible. In conclusion, let us say that Haitian Creole has achieved its global visibility since that period when President Préval delivered his speech at the United Nations. And also the fact that many social networks in Haiti are using exclusively Creole, that has made Creole an important medium of communication in Haiti. But still, the #1 newspaper in Haiti, the Nouvelliste, does not publish in Haitian Creole. It publishes, interestingly enough, in French and Spanish, but no Creole. Actually, the role of Creole as an important element of communication and teaching is being affected in Haiti as a growing number of immigrants and their children are embracing Creole and not French, and of course, English or Spanish, depending on where they live. Although these initiatives are somewhat courageous and meritorious, and although they are encouraging, still today, monolingual Creole speakers, even if they are literate in Haitian Creole, cannot even read their birth certificate because they are written in French. The official newspaper of Haiti is also written exclusively in French, where the laws are published and all the decisions of the government are published. So they cannot read, and most Haitians cannot read and understand what laws the government is passing on their behalf, because they are written in French. Some important exams, such as the high school exams that we call the baccalaureate in Haiti, is still given in French, making it very difficult for many Haitians to succeed. Thank you very much.
Thank you, George, for the comprehensive presentation, both from a personal and historical and political identity dimensions. Extremely helpful. And we will find a way to put it on the website for other people to learn as well, who are not with us here. Stan, we are most eager to hear you, and please, the floor is yours.
Okay, peñamate, pecham. Samanya chunya makupa buskonan. Pele hilikonya we nabara nya pa sholo hilta kamo ne kanapum. Mamlimara nya a pesho. Good day, everyone. My name is Stan Rodriguez. I'm a Ipai Kumyai from the Ipai Nation of San Isabel. And I want to talk to you a little bit about our people. The Ipai Tipai Kumyai people. We are located in Southern California, from San Diego into Baja California, Mexico. San Diego has more reservations than any other county in the United States. We have 18 reservations here. Of those 18 reservations, 13 are Kumeyaay. And there's another 6 more Kumeyaay reservations in Baja California, Mexico. So our people have endured 3 waves of encroachment. The Spanish wave, when they first came, they came first in 1542 with the Cabrillo expedition. They stayed for a few days and they left. And then they came back again 200 years later. And this time it was Father Serra. The Spaniards were weaponizing the missions in order to insert in various areas to sequester the native people, to teach rudimentary skills, to indoctrinate them into Christianity, and to prepare them to be a servant caste in anticipation of Spanish colonists. Well, along with the Cabrillo expedition, our people resisted. In the Cabrillo expedition, we shot some of their sailors. And when the mission was put in San Diego on November 5th, 1775, our people burned down the mission, killed the priest and 2 others. And this was starting the wave of attacking missions that were coming into our territory. Missions on the Colorado River were attacked. 2 missions were burned down. Mission in between Tijuana and Ensenada was burned down also. The priest was hiding under a woman's skirt and escaped, but he was captured about a month later. So, and then when the Mexican era came, they wanted to, allegedly, they said they were going to give the land back to the native people. But Spaniards who were born in Mexico opted instead to take the mission lands after they've been secularized, taken away from the Catholic Church, and they wanted to keep them as these estancias, these estates, and use native people as slave labor. Well, the Kumeyaay attacked San Diego 3 times, almost ran the Mexicans out of our territory. We probably would have run except for something that happened. That was the Mexican-American War. And during the Mexican-American War, the Americans were coming in, and it was part of the Monroe Doctrine, part of Manifest Destiny. And one of the things that was happening was Texas became a free republic. Well, they wanted to join the Union, but Texas was a slave state. And it would have tipped the balance, more slave states than free states, so they needed another state. That was the real reason, one of the real reasons why they took California, or they fought for California. So when California became part of the United States, the first governor of California, Governor Peter Burnett, he issued bounties on the heads of native people. At that time, over 85% of the population in California was natives, and California has more language diversity than any other place in the world aside from Papua New Guinea. So in that time, the numbers decreased dramatically, and uprisings did take place, but they were quelled by the American government. They attempted to tax native people, and however, we did not become citizens until 1923. So, they were breaking their own laws, no taxation without representation. But all this goes back to the doctrine of discovery and the papal bulls that were, created in 1450s and 1493. So anyway, all these things were happening. When it became, how would you say, it fell out of style to just kill native people. That's when they started attempting to assimilate us, to loss of our language, the boarding schools, and they would take our children, put them in the boarding schools where only English was taught. Children were beaten, they were whipped, they were punished for speaking our native language, and our spirituality, our culture was also suppressed. It wasn't until the Freedom of American Indian Religion Act was passed on August 11th, 1978, that we had the same rights as every other citizen in the United States. And it wasn't until the 1990s, and it was Senator Inouye from Hawaii that pushed for the protection of native languages. And this was in the 1990s. So it's only been 30 some years that our languages, our culture have been protected. With that said, when we talk about the diaspora of the Kumeyaay people, the international border that cuts half of our nation, and the difficulty in finding speakers, our numbers dropped down to less than 1,000, where they've gone up to about 4,632 on both sides of the border. Of that, there's 28 people who still speak the language. Now, under the UNESCO 9 factors of language safety and endangerment, 5 being safe, 0 being extinct, the Kumeyaay language is listed as a 1, critically endangered. There's only 28 of our people who still speak it. So, with that, when we talk about language revitalization, because of what's happened in the boarding schools in the United States and in the escuela bilingües, which were not bilingual schools, but they were in Baja, but they were teaching the same thing. If you want your children to do good in school, don't speak the native language, speak Spanish or speak English. For us to reverse language shift, and this is very important, we have to get radical. We have to do language immersion with our assets that we have, because the vibrancy of a language is measured not by how many of the adults speak, but how many of the children speak. You can have all the adults speaking, but if you have none of the children speaking, your language is going to have some problems. So this is something that we are working on, not only in the United States and San Diego, but also in Baja California, Mexico, to develop a pedagogic system that will support language immersion. Now, remember, language and culture support each other. So you can't really have one without the other. So our songs, our ceremonies, the things that have been outlawed by the United States government, bringing those back, bringing back our native knowledge, our native epistemology, our knowledge of the ocean, because our people are people of the islands, the ocean, the valleys, the mountains, the desert, parts of the Colorado River, parts of the Sea of Cortez. So being able to bring all those things is important, because our people have been wounded. Our people have been struggling. We have not been conquered. You know, when you say conquered, that's people who've already given up. You know, if we speak our language, that is resistance. If we sing our songs, that is resistance. If we, conduct our ceremonies, that is resistance. If we live in our native traditional territory, that is resistance. And this is something that is important for the health of our people and the self-equity of our native youth, because our native youth, they are our future. And there's a saying, we are the elders, or we are the ancestors of those who are yet to come. What legacy do we want to leave them? What do we want to give our people? Our people have endured 3 waves of encroachment, and we are still here. And as we reverse language shift, as we revitalize our culture, our ceremonies, we honor our elders, we honor our ancestors who have left before us. They struggled for us to be where we're at, and we are not giving up. We are going to continue to do these things, and we are going to continue to grow, and we look forward to working with other groups who are struggling and learning from each other. Because you know what? One arrow can do many things, but can be broken easy. When we put a whole group of arrows together, a bundle of arrows is unbreakable. So, ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you for letting me say some words. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Stan. You're an amazing advocate.
Thank you.
Stay with us, please.
Okay.
And thank you so much for always pointing it out so effectively of how language and culture are integral together. And when you hurt one, you hurt the other. And that is at the heart of mother language. So thank you so much. Aurelio, where is your picture? Aurelio.
Good morning.
I see you're also mute. Oh, okay, please, now you're unmuted. Could you also share with us your beautiful face?
Oh, thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you, Dr.
thank
Yael.
you. Thank
Yeah,
you.
yeah. So Robin now is in charge from here. Yeah, okay.
Whoops, you have three
Good
languages.
morning. My sharing today is on polytrauma in Philippine life, a post-decolonial take on indigeneity and the healing of bodies and minds.
Mhm.
Before I begin, I'd like to say aloha. May the breath of life be yours. May I begin with a set of questions and also a set of arguments. And these are all found in the summary of what I'm going to be sharing with you today. I'm concerned about, of course, the Philippines, and of course, the Philippines in the Philippines and the Philippines in other countries, including the Philippines in the US. I must begin by the idea that the Philippines has been colonized so many times, and this experience of colonization and even occupation under the Japanese has made a dent in the personal and collective life of the people of the Philippines. I must also say that there are more than 170 ethno-linguistic groups of the Philippines. And if you look at these ethno-linguistic groups, we can say that these are also First Nations in a different light. Now, what has held these various groups in the Philippines together is the sense of themselves, the sense of community, and the sense of their own culture and their sense of what we call now the mother language, or also the first language. Let me also introduce a concept that among the 170 groups of people in the Philippines, there are these Ilocano people presumed to be the third largest in the entire country, and they have a concept of the Greek Anglo-Saxon sense of trauma, and it is called barus. And this barus or trauma is both personal and collective, individual and communal, private and public. Now, I'm also concerned about the people of the Philippines who had gone to other countries and eked out alive somewhere in these countries that they are found. The question next is, what becomes of the individual and the community colonized 4 times? I am beginning this argument by saying that this barus that we talked about among the Ilocano people would be a case of a reason for what I call a schizophrenic bipolar attitude imposed by the state and the nation. This schizophrenic attitude, this bipolar attitude, is summed up in terms of the mother language as this: forget your mother language, that is good only for your private, secret, and hidden sphere or your hidden life. We talked about, for example, the 4 accounts of colonization in the Philippines. First would be the Spaniards, who spent 333 years of colonization in the country, and then eventually the United States, and then eventually during the Second World War, the Japanese. Of course, we can also say that there has this about 2 years of British incursion in the country. And then there is another problem. This idea that there is not only one and only one sense of colonization, which in fact, in popular sense, is external. In the Philippines, the experience of the people is that there is this colonization from within. And so we have, therefore, at least two kinds of colonization: the colonization from without and the colonization from within. Now, if you look into, for example, what's happening in the US, there is this sense of, if you speak Tagalog / Filipino, you are a good Filipino. And in the US too, if you speak good English or you fake that you know English, you are a good Filipino immigrant. And so what happens is that you deny that you still know your mother language. You deny you're being Ilocano, or you deny that you are one of the 170 ethno-linguistic groups of the country. And so where do we go from here? This sense of both internal, which is in fact the imposition of the sense of language and culture and power and citizenship by the state and by the nation. And where do we draw, for example, the line between this hegemonic sense, this sense of subjugation, when we begin to question and understand, or understand and question, the sense of belonging, inclusion, diversity, and equity? Where do we go, really, from here? Quo vadis? And so I propose that we revisit our perspective. I put together here a concept. I've been really toying with this idea that it is not sufficient that we, in fact, when we address this problem of healing and trauma and this memory, the difficult colonial memory, this difficult memory of multi-generational, let's say, immigrant people in the US, we need to be not contented with the idea of our decolonial project, that we need to decolonize. So what I'm talking about is that we need to really go beyond decolonization and say that there is also something happening in the very act of decolonizing our mind. And so we have to say and criticize, what are we in fact decolonizing? And I call this phrase or this concept a post-decolonial perspective. Let me repeat that. It's a post-decolonial perspective. Now, what we're trying to do here is that we are in fact scrutinizing and criticizing and reframing what do we do and how do we in fact decolonize, so that in the end we can address what I call the polytrauma of our lives. And so I propose this framework to be able to respond to this project of post-decolonizing our decolonializing perspective. We need to belong, we need to include, we need to accept and affirm diversity, and we need to work for equity. That would be what would frame what I call a post-decolonial perspective. So when we begin to understand that when we look at this and scrutinize this polytrauma of the Filipinos, whether we're talking about these Filipinos in the Philippines or Filipinos everywhere else in the world, we need therefore to front load this, another way of looking at the whole concern, this whole issue. And I suggested a while ago that we need to really be scrutinizing also what we have done so far and what in fact did not make sense. So we tried to decolonize, to purge what we do not need from this 333 years of Spanish experience and this almost more than a century now of experience under the Americans, and of course the trauma of war under the Japanese. And so what we need to do is scrutinize what we have done and therefore figure out that there is something that we have to look into and revisit. Now, while we do acknowledge that we have been colonized by the outsiders, we have to also acknowledge that with the imposition of a sense of nation, a sense of nationalism, from the perspective of the center of power, which in fact has legislated national everything, national language, national sense of things, national flower, national tree, national fruit, and so on down the line, and that therefore effectively excluded the other people or the other First Nations from outside the center of power. We need to see that in these processes of decolonizing, we are in fact introducing a new form of colonization. I call this the internal colonization that happened, and that we have in fact naturalized. We have made it natural. And so this has become the measure of our lives to fall into the requisites of the dictates of the nation and its agency, the state, is in fact is in fact the standard of being a person, a citizen, or a Filipino or a Filipino American. And so in this light, we just cannot, in fact, address the sense of the traumatic if the sense of the schizophrenic, the sense of the bipolar in the way we do things remain to be entrenched in both our personal and collective lives. And on this note, therefore, I thank Dr. Mary Fabry. I thank Dr. Gordon Lee. I thank Robbie. I thank Dr. Yael Danieli. I thank also the International Center for Multi-Generational Legacies of Trauma. Mahalo nui loa. Thank you so much. Good morning.
Well, thank you so much, Aurelio. You can consider yourself part of our family. Thank you for your inspirational presentation and for the conceptual system you proposed. That could be of great interest for us to look at in the future as well. And it's very related to actually to my own thinking and concept. So can you just talk about the NACEM meetings, please? I promised the audience, but unmute. I promised the audience you'll make a mention of it. And
Yeah,
and I can't do it myself. So just complete that. And Kaimana, you are next. Go ahead, Aurelio, please.
okay. I'll do it very briefly, something like a minute. Kaimana, I'm going to get only a minute, all right? So NACEM is an international alliance of advocates of language justice, cultural democracy, and emancipatory education. I put this up in 2006 at the 100th year of the coming of the Ilocano people to Hawaii, and Kaimana knows this story. And so from in 2006, when I got this job in Hawaii, I came from Los Angeles. By the way, I'm a transplant Kaimana of Hawaii, but I love Hawaii better than Los Angeles. Okay, anyways. No, so it's the National Alliance for Knowledge, Empowerment, and Meaning. Incidentally, accidentally as well, it's actually the core concept of the Ilocano people about the sense of person, morality, consciousness, liberation, freedom, and so on. So from there, I developed a broader meaning of that to include other people. And we are found now in 6 places. One is in California. This is a consortium now in the Philippines, in Hawaii, in Canada. In We have also a group from what we call the NACEM Without Borders. These are actually the group of Filipinos who are found in, let's say, 140, even more than 140 countries around the world. These are actually these what we call these Filipino workers on contract agreement with other countries because they cannot find work in the country. And so we are now 6 in the consortium, and I am the accidental head of the consortium. I am the accidental head. Okay, Dr. Yael. Okay.
Thanks for your humility. You know, when Mary and I were working on, you have Mary's fondest and warmest greetings, all of you. And when Mary and I were working on this webinar, we were looking up NACAM. What does it mean? I said, wow, it's so exciting. So, so
Thank you,
maybe
Dr. Yael.
with this webinar and your accidental, humble leadership, we can organize a meeting.
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
A meeting exactly on these issues that will be just like this webinar that is multi-dimensional and multidisciplinary.
We are holding the 19th annual NACAM in a part in the Philippines, the southern part, and we
Uh,
are dealing with indigeneity issues and social justice. And
yes,
if you have time, please come by. It's gonna be in July.
we'll talk about it. Stan, are you coming, George?
Please do come. Okay, it's going to be the southern part of the Philippines where there's this merging of both the Southeast Asian cultures, indigenous peoples, and of course, issues about how we keep on resisting, according to Dr. Stanley and Dr. Georges. How do we keep on resisting? By the way, like not saying yes to what the state is in fact saying, so that we can be conditioned by this sometimes,
We are coming.
yeah,
Okay. Kaimana. Everybody gets humble and take the picture away before they speak. This is an interesting way of doing this. Kaimana, take us through your seas.
Yes, ma'am. Mai kau e he moleli tamali e hawai inui tua uli mai te tua lono a te tua. Mai te pito mauna te ai kanu kumuli iwai. Ulu e hi hawa i heina li. O pau hei te li puo leni o ka mea mea ke li nui. O ta ina te li ro matona tua ka waina e. He aina uru, he aina ike, he aina momona. He aina ola i te wailani o kulani hako i e ola kaina, e ola mātu nei lai. Aloha nui mai kako o waho i keia o kaimana o Nalani Barkarsi. Hanei ia ho i keia ma ka moko o ke ave, e ino na e no Kauai ka aina o ku makua kāne. O mauna wā kia ku kua hiwi, o waia kia ku wai honua, o kulani hākoi ku wailani, o kuhio ku awa, o ka moele hua ku makani. Aloha nui mai kākou. My name is Kaimana Barkarsi. I am raised on the island of Hawaii, but the island of my father and his family is the island of Kauai. Mauna Kea is my mountain. The Waiakea, or the expansive waters, is my fresh water. Kulani Hako'e is my source of heavenly water and inspiration. Kuhio is the bay, which I call home. And the Mo'elehua, or the Kea'eloa, is my wind. Aloha, thank you for allowing me to be here and allowing me to share a little bit about our people and about our languages, our language here in Hawaii. I'm going to share a few slides so that I can get this moving a little faster. I may make up some time. I think, Q&A is always the most some of the most valuable discussions that we have. So I'm hoping that everyone can
Yeah, it's very good.
see this here. Let's see.
Oh my God. Oof.
Ika olelo keolo, ika olelo kamake. In language, there's life. In language, there is death. A profound statement of our people. This is an olelo no'eau, one of our proverbs, and one that I hold really dear to heart. Hawaiian is the language of our land. It was before we were occupied, and it still is today. It was the language of our government. It was the language of religion, of commerce. It was the language of education. It was the language of our community. Um, the interesting part of it all is that our our people are often told that we were saved by the missionaries coming to give us language, to teach us how to read and write. And true, well, they did introduce reading and writing and printing. It was our chiefs, it was our leaders that took that to heart. It was our ali'i that made it possible for all of us to advance. We had a strong oral tradition before the introduction of this modern technology of reading and writing. It was not uncommon for many people to know the Kumulipo, our Oli Ko'ihonua, our creation chant, which is over 2,000 lines long, for thousands of years shared down and down to generation, that knowledge captured in the voices of our people. But as times are modernizing, as times are changing, our ancestors knew, our ali'i, our chiefs knew that we needed to take the technology of the day. So if you look at it, this printing press here, this is Halepa'i, in Lahaina on the island of Maui. It was the first printing press west of the Rockies. In about a short 50-year period, we had more than 100 titles of newspaper and journals. We just got a handful in Hawaii today that's printed constantly. This was like the Facebook of that time. A lot of things were shared in the newspapers, but also rebutted, or other views went back and forth. It's kind of like trolling in chats at times when you look at our modern social media, but on a little bit of expanded pace. We also took on other technologies of the day. As a matter of fact, our Iolani Palace, as well as our Hulihe Palace, our two palaces, had electricity before the White House had electricity. We were advanced people. Our chiefs, our kings, made treaties with many nations around the world. Our King Kalakaua was the first monarch to have sailed around the world. We're very proud and advanced people. Our languages, this is just also my background. This is just an example of some of the printing that was done. At a certain point in time, we have a conservative estimate of 93% literacy. One
Wow.
of, if not the most literate nations in the world at that period of time. We had over 100 newspapers that were in print. And if you were to take what was left, so a lot of our writings were lost to mold and mildew, water, damage, fire, and just being tossed. But if you take what was left that was converted to microfilm, microfiche, and you converted it to a just a 8.5 by 11 page, we would have over 1.5 million pages of knowledge in our language, of which only 6 to 8% has been translated. Of the 6 to 8% that has been translated, we're not really planning on translating much more. We use about 10 to 15% of that. We would rather than translate, we need to grow our native speakers so that they can utilize this canon of knowledge, and they can help start to understand better the worldviews and the perspectives that these works were written in. Unfortunately, in 1893, Ho'okahuli'ia Keopuni Mo'i, our kingdom was overthrown. At the behest of American businessmen, the United States Marines overthrew our government, imprisoned our Queen Liliuokalani in her own palace, and set up a new government, fully unconstitutional. There's a saying, I won't try the in its original language, but that from Gaelic, basically translating to people without their language is dead. And in 1896, the government imposed a ban on the Hawaiian language. I've had many scholarly debates because the language wasn't really banning. There was not a law that said Hawaiian language is banned. The law basically instated English as the only medium of education in all schools, both public and private. And then people were punished for speaking Hawaiian. Interestingly enough, we have Japanese and Chinese and other ethnic schools that were still holding schools and classes within their languages, but they were not suppressed the way we were. Fast forward about 100 years. In 1982, a survey was taken. Now, we got to understand, from the time of pre-contact, there's a conservative estimate of somewhere around 850 to 1.2 million Kanaka Hawaii, or indigenous peoples of Hawaii, in Hawaii, pre-contact. By the time our Princess Kapi'olani passed in June of 1899, that number had reduced to 25 to 40,000. So every single Kanaka Hawaii, every single indigenous person of Hawaii is a survivor of that 25 to 40,000 Kanaka back in around 1899. Now, fast forward about 100 years, in 1982, a survey was done. And, I really appreciated what Stan said about the importance of the next generation. In 1982, a survey was done of Mana Leo, which are native speakers of our language. And throughout all of our islands, it was estimated that less than 50 speakers existed, native speakers existed, under the age of 18. Most of them from the island of Ni'ihau, where Hawaiian is the only language spoken there. And why is that important? That represents a generation. If something was not done immediately, one more generation and our language would be fully lost without the continuity of native speakers. But we are an Olelo Ola. We are a thriving language. Just a couple years after that study, the first Puranaleo language nest preschool, modeled after the Kohangare, our Maori cousins down south, and we appreciate their sharing with us. But the first Puranaleo language nest preschool had been established. And then in 1987, our first K-12 immersion school, our Kulakai Puni, started. Now, it wasn't without a lot of controversy and whatnot, but we endured. And in 1999, the first graduating class that started in preschool and graduated of Navahio Colonial Pu'u graduated. But we had to change policy because remember that ban on teaching languages? We were doing this illegally. We did it in parks before we got classrooms, and we were doing it illegally because the law is still on the books declaring that English is the only medium of education. But that ban, we started in 1986 and it was finally outlawed in 1987. And we're moving forward. Today, we can be taught from preschool, from 6 weeks old, the hui hi'ipepe, meaning the group that holds the child to the bosom and feeds the language from mouth to mouth. You can go from 6 weeks old through preschool, through K-12, and on through bachelor's, master's, and doctorate in our language. Now, important to note, these degrees are not about our language. These degrees are through our language. We also teach Japanese, Chinese, Latin, French, and other languages through the medium of our home tongue. And most importantly, we are continuing to have our knowledge passed from generation to generation, from elder to parent to child. And as Stan mentioned, we are the future elders and the future ancestors of those who are yet to come. Today, census data shares that about 24,000 households identify Hawaiian language as the dominant language of their household. That's still not enough. We have 680,000 Kanaka Hawaii, indigenous people of Hawaii, scattered throughout Hawaii. And unfortunately, there are more on the continent than there are here in Hawaii. There's a lot that has to change, but there's a lot that we need to be thankful for. Eola ka'olelo Hawaii. Our Hawaiian language, it will live. Our Hawaiian language will continue on. Let's see. I'll just stop share here. That when I first started in the language movement in the late 80s, early 90s, I remember when I heard somebody speak in Hawaiian outside of the scholastic setting, you knew who they were, or at the very least, you knew who their teachers were. Today, I'm happy to say that I can go into a coffee shop. I'll sit on an airplane. I'll sit in a shopping center, and I'll hear people speaking Hawaiian. They don't know that I speak it, and I understand their conversations. I introduce myself. I don't always know their teachers. This is a beautiful thing. This is a wonderful thing that language has proliferated. But there is also some concern. There's also some concern that the linguistic side of our language is strengthening. But we need to put the theory into practice. We need to connect. We need to take the language outside of just the schools. I have a Hawaiian language radio show, and I've been doing it for like about 25 years. And, my mom always says I got perfect face for radio. So I really enjoy being on there. But my past few co-hosts have been students who've come through and spent some internship time. And I'm really looking forward to the day that I can step back and be fully replaced by the next generation. But that's using Hawaiian in a modern context. We have voyaging canoes that have crews that speak entirely in our language. That we need to reclaim our farming. We need to our weaving traditions. We need to reclaim our medicine. We do have a lot of experts that are in this and incorporating more and more our Hawaiian language. But as with anything else, we need to rule the technologies of the day. And we need to do things as natives, as indigenous peoples, through the worldview of our ancestors. One of the biggest dangers I feel to our well-being is the greater good. Is the greater good that, a lot of times indigenous rights and indigenous peoples get put aside for the greater good. When in reality, the way we interact with our environments, the way we interact with our communities, our land, our skies, our seas, is for the greater good, non-extractive, coinciding. We need to ensure that we have the ability for our people not only to speak our languages, but to think and to dream in our native languages. So there's a lot to be grateful for, but there is still a lot more to move forward. We need to make sure that what our needs and our rights and our worldviews aren't caught up in the popular worldviews of different types of rights and movements, and that we come from a place of knowledge, from a place of our ancestors. So there's a lot to do, but a lot to be thankful for. And I'm just appreciative that you've given me a few minutes to share a few words, share a few thoughts, and share a song with you. With that, mahalo nui a kākoa pauloa. Aloha, aloha, aloha. Thank you.
Would you please unmute so we can move? Aloha, and we're coming, or kaimana. Perhaps we can organize one meeting in the Philippines and one in Hawaii. And somebody said in the chat, I think it was Erica, yeah, she said she's packing her bags already.
Bring sunscreen, we'll do it on the land and in the water.
I was wondering whether I feel so enriched. I wish, these are one of the moments I wish my mother was still alive, because she was a teacher and she loved languages. And she would sit here with a big, big, big smile and feeling so happy to learn from your wisdom, from your experience, from the complexity of what you conveyed. I was wondering if you have comments to each other before we ask the questions from the audience.
I have
Any
one sentence.
Go ahead, go ahead.
My one sentence is this one. This is a hard work, the one that we are doing. But we cannot rest. We cannot rest up. We just cannot stop. That's all I can say. I'm hearing Dr. Georges and Dr. Stanley and Kumu Kaimana. I said, oh, this is hard work we're doing.
It's very hard, consistent, has to be systematic, can't be let go of. It needs total commitment.
I'll add to that real quick to say that yes, it is definitely hard work, but it's what I loved hearing each of your stories, is seeing the different parts of the work that you've all engaged in and all taken on.
Exactly.
We cannot do it alone. We cannot do it ourselves. But if we do the best that we can in the areas that we have been given responsibility over, it adds to the collective effort, and that's how we win in the long run.
I agree.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Stan, you want to unmute, please?
No, I definitely agree. And you know, hard work. It reminds me of one time I was learning these certain songs from an elder, and he was telling me certain things. I could not eat meat during this time. I could not eat anything with fat or lard, and we were going to be starting at sundown. So after he was done, I was walking away, and he said, "Where are you going?" And I was about maybe 28 years old. I said, "Well, I'm going to rest before we start." And he went nose to nose with me. And he said, "I'm 89 years old. There's enough time for me to rest when I'm dead." He wasn't going to argue with that. So I stayed up.
In 2 weeks, I'll be 84. I believe it very deeply.
84, Dr. Yael. Yeah.
I will rest then.
Enough time.
I'll be in the grave for a long, long time. Right? Now it's the time to live. Thank you. It's so much fun to be validated by someone you don't even know. George, would you like to say something in response to others, or should we go to the audience?
We're going to go to the audience. I think I enjoy listening to the different perspectives and the different situations that exist in the context of mother language use in society, in education, and the like. And this is a sad story that we are still talking about these things in 2024. Right?
Yes,
It is a sad story. I mean, we should be at a point where these things are just passé. These are things of the past. But unfortunately, those things continue. I mean, it's heartbreaking when you look at it that way. It's heartbreaking.
Yes, it is. Thank you for bringing that into the complexity.
Yes.
Yes, it's absolutely correct. It's a genuine struggle.
Yeah.
But I don't know of many more worthwhile ones to bring people back to who they are.
Right.
And to both going, we once held a conference called Remembering for the Future. And this is what you're reminding me of, right? We are remembering for the future.
Right.
And we're really experiencing the flow of generations and time. Erica, you wanted to ask a question, and I believe Robbie, can you give Erica the mic? Robbie? Good. Erica, go ahead. Speak to us. You have to unmute.
Hey, hi, can you hear me? Hi, oh my gosh. Hi, wow. Thank you first and foremost. I am just beyond inspired by everything each of you has said. And I asked a rather long question because it's a complicated one. As an American, it's interesting because I'm born in America. I'm not a Native American, but you know, I studied Native American history for my senior thesis. And my capstone was genocide. I studied the Jewish Holocaust, and I studied the Holocaust of the Native Americans. And frankly, what led me to this was the outrage I felt for not being taught this history growing up. I personally grew up with Pocahontas, my favorite Disney character, to find out this tragic history. And basically what I'm trying to ask is, how can my generation, I'm 29, I graduated international studies with this awareness that as an American, as a European, there's this history of mistrust. There's a history of multi-generational trauma that is understandable, that personally, if I were to try to communicate and I was not received well, I would understand, because of what their experiences have led them to perceive, if that's coming across the right way, I'm not sure. But as someone who genuinely
You're excited.
Yeah, so I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm a little excited. I'm trying to go back to my question and thank you for.
It's okay. You ask how you can help, and you can definitely help the center, and that will definitely help us do much more work with this. Mangaldan, you said it's really hard work. It's mentioned by Dr. Azoulay, and as confirmed by the rest of the speakers, but we cannot be complacent about language revitalization. We are in the academe can start it by educating our students the value of speaking their mother language. Absolutely.
Yes.
I bet this is a very, don't make a thing of it, please.
Sorry, I just.
That just, Mary, you want to, I think Mary wanted to come in, and also Jean-Luc. Mary? Robbie, can you put Mary on and then Jean-Luc? Here's beautiful Mary. Hi.
Okay. Oh, this has been an amazing webinar. I thank all of you for the hard work you're doing. Really, it's inspiring. And I have more of a comment. It's like for I think probably the first time listening to all of you, I realized how strategic it was for colonizers to forbid your language. What a better way to attempt to strip you of your identities. It's like I had never conceptualized it that way before. So I want to thank you're making my mind open up to thinking about these issues, which I've always cared about, with a different lens. So thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Yes, it's extraordinary how the webinar was about mother languages, but it was really about identity.
So thank you.
Yeah, I think Jean-Luc left already after expressing genuine understanding of the struggle here. Erica, don't feel bad. I know you're starstruck. These are stars, absolutely. And not to worry, you will learn. I think the average age of what you're looking at is probably 70 something. So it makes sense. Gentlemen, all of the little connections in my brain are totally unlit, and I can't wait for it to continue to light more and more and more. And I don't have enough words to thank you. Please stay with us, stay with our centers so that we continue to teach the world and to comfort those who are struggling. Because as you said, you can't, nothing, really, we can't do things alone. Jaimana, maybe we should end by your first slide. Language is life, language is death. And we are waiting to continue our plans together for the future. And thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And as I
Mahalo.
told you, this is going to be on radio. It's going to, as I mentioned in our rehearsals, there are professors around the world who are using our webinars as teaching tools to their students. And I can't think of a better one, introduction to the issues, than this webinar. So we have to celebrate the revitalization of language, and also the love here and the wisdom. Hard to say goodbye. I want to share that our upcoming webinar will take place March 7, Thursday, March 7. And in contrast to this beautiful group of gentlemen, it will be celebrating International Women's Day. And all of our participants are women. It's also international, and I promise you, full of wisdom. So you'll receive the flyer immediately after this session. Please be well, and let's keep in touch.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you, everybody.
Aloha.
I really enjoyed
Mahalo.
listening to you all. Really did. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mahalo, everyone.
Okay. Take
Okay.
care.
Bye-bye.